Welcome to Murder and Mystery HQ. Let's dive straight into it. June 4th, 2010, Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon. Kids are excitedly showing off their science fair projects. Parents are snapping photos. Everything is exactly as it should be. But by 3:30 that afternoon, one of those children, a sweet, glasses-wearing 7-year-old boy with a bright smile, would be gone. Not from a dark alley, not from a dangerous neighborhood, but from his school. And here's what makes this case so unbelievably disturbing. He was last seen standing in front of his science fair project, excited to show it to his classmates. And then, nothing. He was just gone. Kyron Richard Horman was born on September 9th, 2002. And right from the start, this was a kid who was absolutely full of life. His biological parents, Kyron Horman and Desiree Young, described him as curious, intelligent, and just genuinely excited about learning. The kind of kid who would ask a million questions about everything he saw. He loved science. I mean, really loved it. He'd spend hours reading books about frogs and insects. His favorite thing in the world? Tree frogs. He knew everything about them. He was also obsessed with CSI, the TV show, and would tell anyone who'd listen that when he grew up, he was going to be a detective. Here's the thing, though. Kyron's home life was complicated. His parents, Kyron and Desiree, had divorced when he was just a baby. Desiree had some health issues. She suffered from kidney failure. And so, custody was given to Kyron. But this wasn't some bitter custody battle. Desiree stayed very involved in Kyron's life. She loved that boy more than anything. In 2007, Kyron remarried. His new wife's name was Terry Horman, and Terry became Kyron's stepmother. She was the one who took care of him day to day, who helped him with homework, who drove him to school. By all accounts, Terry seemed to really care about Kyron. She was very involved, very attentive. Some would even say almost too involved. And that detail? That's going to become very important later. All right, so let's talk about June 4th, 2010. It's the last day before summer break, and Skyline Elementary is hosting a science fair. And Kyron, he is pumped. For weeks, he's been working on his project about the red-eyed tree frog. He's made this whole display with information, pictures, the works. He can't wait to show it off. That morning, Terry, his stepmother, drives Kyron to school. They arrive early, around 8 a.m., because the science fair starts before regular classes. It's crowded, chaotic, but in a good way. Terry walks Kyron down to his classroom, and they set up his project together. She even takes a photo of him standing in front of his display. He's wearing his glasses, a black t-shirt with the letters CSI on it, his favorite show, remember? And he's smiling, just a happy little kid, proud of his work. And that photo, that's the last known photo of Kyron Horman. According to Terry, she walked around the science fair with Kyron for a bit, and then around 8:45 a.m., she says she saw him walking down the hallway toward his classroom. She says he waved goodbye to her. She says he seemed fine, normal, happy. And then Terry left. She got in her truck and drove away. Now here's where things get strange. And stay with me here, because this detail is crucial. When the bell rang and class started at 10 a.m., Kyron's teacher, Mrs. Porter, marked him absent. She didn't think much of it at first. She assumed maybe he had a doctor's appointment or something, and that Terry had just forgotten to notify the school. But Kyron wasn't at a doctor's appointment, because at 3:30 p.m., when the school bus dropped kids off in the neighborhood, Kyron wasn't on it. And that's when Terry Horman realized something was very, very wrong. So imagine you're Terry Horman. It's 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. You're waiting at the bus stop for your stepson to come home. The bus pulls up. Kids start pouring out. But you don't see Kyron. At first, you think maybe he got off at the wrong stop. Or maybe he's still at school doing something. You're not panicking yet, not really. But then you call the school. And they tell you that Kyron never made it to class. He was marked absent all day. Now, your heart is racing. Because you dropped him off at school. You saw him there. He was at the science fair. He walked toward his classroom. So where is he? Terry immediately calls Kyron, Kyron's father. He's at work. He rushes to the school. Desiree, Kyron's biological mother, gets the call too. She lives in Medford, about 250 miles away, but she immediately gets in her car and starts driving. By 4 p.m., the school is locked down. By 4:30 p.m., the police are there, and by 5 p.m., this has officially become a missing child case. And here's what makes this so bizarre. Nobody saw anything. In a school full of parents, teachers, and kids, nobody saw Kyron leave. Nobody saw him with anyone suspicious. Nobody heard him cry out for help. He was just gone. Now, when a child goes missing, especially a 7-year-old, the first 48 hours are absolutely critical, and law enforcement knew this, so they moved fast. Within hours, search and rescue teams were combing through the woods around Skyline Elementary. We're talking dense Oregon forest, thick trees, steep terrain, lots of places for a small child to get lost or hurt. They brought in search dogs. They brought in helicopters with thermal imaging. Volunteers started showing up by the hundreds, and I mean, this search was massive. Over the next few days, more than 1,200 people would join the effort. They searched every inch of that forest. They checked abandoned buildings, drainage pipes, wells, ravines, everywhere. The FBI got involved. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children got involved. Kyron's face was suddenly everywhere, on the news, on flyers, on billboards, and the theory at this point? Most people assumed Kyron had wandered off into the woods. Maybe he got disoriented. Maybe he fell and got hurt. It was tragic, but it made sense. Except, the search dogs never picked up a scent trail leading away from the school, not into the woods, not toward the parking lot, nowhere. And that's when investigators started to realize this might not be a case of a lost child. This might be something much worse. All right, so let's break down the timeline here because this is where things start to get really weird. Terry says she dropped Kyron off at 8 a.m. She says she walked around the science fair with him until about 8:45 a.m. She says she saw him walking toward his classroom, and then she left. But here's the problem. Other parents and teachers saw Kyron at the science fair too, and their accounts line up with Terry's. Until they don't. One witness says they saw Kyron near the school's south entrance around 9 a.m. Another says they saw him in a different hallway. The stories start to conflict. And then there's this. Terry's timeline for the rest of that morning is, let's just say, it's a bit all over the place. After she says she left the school at 8:45 a.m., Terry claims she went to 2 different grocery stores, Fred Meyer and Albertsons. Then she says she drove around for a bit because Kyron's baby half-sister, Kiara, who was also in the truck, was fussy and wouldn't settle down. Then she says she went to the gym. Investigators checked the surveillance footage from the grocery stores, and sure enough, Terry's truck is on camera. But here's the thing, the timestamps don't quite match up with her story. There are gaps, unexplained periods of time, and people started asking, where was Terry during those gaps? And more importantly, was Kyron with her? Now, let me be very clear about something. In cases like this, law enforcement always looks at the family first. It's not because they're heartless or because they want to accuse innocent people. It's because statistically, when a child goes missing, someone close to them is usually involved. And in this case, all eyes turned to Terry Horman. At first, Terry was cooperative. She talked to police. She gave interviews. She seemed devastated. But as the days went on, investigators started noticing things. Terry took a polygraph test, and according to reports, she failed. Twice. Now, polygraphs aren't admissible in court, and they're not 100% accurate, but failing too? That raised some serious red flags. Then there was her behavior. Kani and Desiree, Kyron's parents, started to feel like something was off. Terry seemed more concerned with defending herself than finding Kyron. She hired a lawyer almost immediately. She stopped cooperating with police, and then the bombshells started dropping. So about 2 weeks after Kyron disappeared, Kani Horman did something that shocked everyone. He filed for divorce from Terry and got a restraining order against her. But not just any restraining order. He specifically requested that Terry have no contact with their daughter, Kiara. And the reason why? It's absolutely chilling. According to the restraining order, Caney claimed that Terry had tried to hire someone to murder him. Yes, you heard that right. Murder him. Here's what allegedly happened. About 7 months before Kyron disappeared, so this is back in late 2009, Terry apparently approached a landscaper who had done some work on their property. His name was Rudy Sanchez, and according to Rudy, Terry asked him if he knew anyone who could kill her husband. Rudy says Terry offered him $10,000 to do it. She allegedly showed him photos of Caney and told him where he worked, what his schedule was like, everything he'd need to know. Now Rudy says he didn't take her seriously at first. He thought she was joking, but she kept bringing it up. She was persistent. So eventually Rudy went to the police and told them about it. But here's the crazy part. The police investigated, but they couldn't find enough evidence to charge Terry with anything, so they just kept an eye on her. And then, 7 months later, Kyron disappeared. So now investigators are thinking, if Terry was willing to try to have her husband killed, what else might she be capable of? As investigators dug deeper into Terry's life, more and more strange things started coming to light. First, there was the fact that Terry had been having an affair. While she was married to Caney, she was exchanging explicit texts and photos with an old high school boyfriend. This was going on right around the time Kyron disappeared. Then there were the inconsistencies in her story. Remember how I said there were gaps in her timeline? Well, investigators found out that Terry's phone had pinged off cell towers in areas that didn't match up with where she said she was. At one point, her phone pinged off a tower on Sauvie Island, a rural, isolated area about 10 miles from the school. Why would she be out there? She had no reason to go there, but it's the kind of place where, if you wanted to hide something, or someone, it would be the perfect spot. Investigators also found out that Terry had been searching the internet for some pretty disturbing things. I won't go into all the details, but let's just say the search history didn't look good. And then there was her demeanor. In interviews, Terry seemed detached, cold even. She didn't cry. She didn't seem frantic. She seemed more concerned with how she was being portrayed in the media than with finding Kyron. Caney and Desiree were convinced. Terry knew what happened to Kyron, or worse, she was responsible. While all of this is going on, Kyron's family is absolutely falling apart. Caney is trying to process the fact that his son is missing and his wife might be responsible. He's also fighting for custody of Kiara because there's no way he's letting Terry near his daughter. Desiree is beside herself. She's doing interview after interview, begging for anyone with information to come forward. She truly believes Terry knows what happened, and she's not shy about saying it publicly. And Terry? She's in hiding. She's stopped talking to the media. Her lawyer is doing all the talking for her now. The public is divided. Some people think Terry is clearly guilty. Others think she's being unfairly accused, and that the real abductor is still out there. But here's the thing. Despite all the suspicion, despite all the circumstantial evidence, police have never charged Terry with anything related to Kyron's disappearance. Why? Because they don't have a body. They don't have physical evidence. They don't have a confession. And without those things, they can't make a case. Now, while Terry is the prime focus of the investigation, there are other theories out there, and we'd be doing this case a disservice if we didn't talk about them. Theory number 1, Kyron wandered off and got lost. But remember, the search was exhaustive. They covered miles and miles of forest. The dogs didn't pick up a scent. It seems unlikely. Theory number 2, a stranger abduction. Someone saw Kyron at the science fair, saw an opportunity, and grabbed him. The problem with this theory? There were so many people at that school that morning. How would someone just walk out with a child without anyone noticing? Theory number 3, someone at the school was involved. A teacher, a staff member, someone with access. But again, there's no evidence pointing to anyone specific. And then there's theory number 4, the one that Caney and Desiree believe. Terry did something to Kyron. Maybe it was planned. Maybe it was an accident that she covered up. But either way, they believe she knows what happened. The truth is, without more evidence, we may never know for sure. As the months turned into years, the search for Kyron continued, but it changed. The massive ground searches stopped. The helicopters stopped flying. The volunteer efforts died down, but investigators never gave up. They continued following leads. Every time someone called in a tip, they checked it out. Every time someone claimed to have seen a boy who looked like Kyron, they investigated. In 2013, investigators drained a nearby pond, thinking Kyron's body might be there. They found nothing. In 2016, they searched a property on Sauvie Island, the same area where Terry's phone had pinged years earlier. Again, nothing. Over the years, there have been reported sightings of Kyron all over the country, in Canada, in California, in Florida, but none of them ever panned out. Desiree has never stopped looking for her son. She holds annual vigils. She keeps his case in the media. She refuses to let people forget about Kyron. And Caney? He's tried to rebuild his life. He has custody of Kiara. He's remarried. But he said in interviews that there's not a day that goes by where he doesn't think about Kyron. So what about Terry? Where is she now? Well, Terry Horman has essentially disappeared from public life. She divorced from Caney, was finalized. She has no custody of Kiara, and to this day, she maintains her innocence. In the rare interviews she's given, Terry has said that she had nothing to do with Kyron's disappearance. She's claimed that she's been unfairly vilified by the media and by Kyron's family. She said that she loved Kyron and would never hurt him. But she's also refused to cooperate with investigators. She's invoked her Fifth Amendment rights, and she's never provided a satisfactory explanation for the inconsistencies in her timeline. To this day, Terry Horman has never been charged with any crime related to Kyron's disappearance, and unless new evidence comes to light, she probably never will be. But in the court of public opinion, most people have already made up their minds. So here's what investigators believe happened, and I want to stress, this is theory, not fact. They believe that Terry never left the school that morning. They think that she took Kyron out of the school under some pretense, maybe telling him they were going to see his parents or that they were going to do something fun. They think she drove him somewhere remote, possibly Sauvie Island or another isolated area. And then something happened. Maybe she hurt him intentionally. Maybe it was an accident and she panicked. But either way, they believe Kyron died that day. They think Terry then hid his body somewhere it would never be found. Oregon has thousands of acres of dense forest, deep ravines, and bodies of water. If someone wanted to hide a body, they could. Then they think Terry went about her day, going to the grocery store, going to the gym, to create an alibi and appear normal. And when the school called to say Kyron was missing, she acted surprised. She played the concerned parent. She called Caney and Desiree. She cooperated with police until she didn't. Now, is this what happened? We don't know. And without a confession or physical evidence, we may never know. But this is the theory that investigators have been working with for years, and it's the theory that Kyron's family believes. The problem is proving it. Kyron's disappearance didn't just affect his family, it affected an entire community, an entire state, really. Parents in Portland became terrified. If a child could vanish from a school, a place that's supposed to be safe, then where were kids safe? Schools across Oregon implemented new security measures, sign-in sheets for visitors, background checks for volunteers, stricter policies about who could walk the halls, but no amount of security measures could bring Kyron back, and no amount of policy changes could ease the guilt that some people felt. Kyron's teacher, Mrs. Porter, has said in interviews that she's haunted by that day. She's asked herself 1,000 times if there was something she could have done differently. Should she have called sooner when Kyron didn't show up to class? Should she have checked with the office? But the truth is, she did nothing wrong. She had no way of knowing what was happening. None of them did. In interviews over the years, Desiree Young has been incredibly open about her pain. She's talked about how she'll never get to see Kyron grow up, never get to see him graduate, never get to see him become the scientist or detective he always dreamed of being. She's talked about the guilt she feels, wondering if things would have been different if Kyron had been living with her, instead of Caney and Terry. But most of all, she's talked about hope. Because despite everything, despite all these years, she still believes that one day she'll find out what happened to her son. She still believes that someone out there knows something, and she's begging them to come forward. Caney has been more reserved, but he's said that the hardest part is not knowing, not being able to give Kyron a proper burial, not being able to have closure. And Kiara, Kyron's little half-sister, she's a teenager now. She doesn't remember Kyron. She was just a baby when he disappeared. But she knows his story, and she carries his memory with her. So here's the big question. Will we ever know what happened to Kyron Horman? Honestly, it's hard to say. The case is still open. It's still being actively investigated. And every few years, there's a new development, a new search, a new lead, a new piece of evidence. In 2022, investigators asked the public for any photos or videos taken at the science fair that day. They were hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone captured something in the background that could be a clue. They received hundreds of submissions, and they're still going through them. There's also hope that advances in technology could help. Better forensic techniques, better data analysis, maybe something that seemed insignificant years ago will suddenly become important. And then there's the possibility that someone will talk. Maybe someone who knows what happened will develop a conscience. Maybe on their deathbed they'll confess. It's happened before in cold cases. But the reality is this: it's been over 14 years, and with each passing year, the chances of finding Kyron or finding out what happened to him grow slimmer. Still, his family hasn't given up, investigators haven't given up, and the public hasn't forgotten, because Kyron Horman wasn't just a case number. He was a real little boy, with dreams and hopes and a future that was stolen from him. What makes this case so haunting isn't just that he disappeared. It's that he disappeared from a place where he should have been safe, surrounded by adults, surrounded by people who cared about him. And despite one of the largest investigations in Oregon history, despite thousands of tips and countless hours of searching, we still don't know what happened. Is Terry Horman responsible? Most people think so. But without evidence, she may never face justice. Is Kyron still out there somewhere? His family prays that he is. But after all these years, it seems unlikely. But if you have any information about the disappearance of Kyron Horman, please contact the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. Even the smallest detail could be the key to finally solving this case. June 3, 2011. Bloomington, Indiana. Home to Indiana University, one of the biggest party schools in America. It's the beginning of summer. Students are celebrating the end of finals. The bars are packed. The streets are alive with that electric energy that only exists in a college town. And in the middle of all this celebration is a 20-year-old girl named Lauren Spierer. She's 4 feet 11 inches tall, weighs maybe 95 pounds. She's got long blonde hair, a bright smile, and her whole life ahead of her. At 12:30 a.m., Lauren is captured on a security camera, walking barefoot down an alley near her apartment. She's with friends. She seems okay. A little unsteady maybe, but okay. By 4:30 a.m., just 4 hours later, Lauren Spierer would be gone, vanished, as if she'd simply evaporated into the warm Indiana night. And here's what makes this case so incredibly frustrating. Multiple people saw Lauren that night. Multiple people were with her. We have a nearly minute-by-minute timeline of her final hours, and yet nobody knows what happened to her. It's been over 13 years, and Lauren Spierer has never been found. No body, no physical evidence, no confession, just a trail of unanswered questions, suspicious stories, and a family that's been living in agony ever since. So today we're going to walk through Lauren's final night, step by step. And I'm warning you, the more you learn about this case, the more infuriating it becomes. Lauren Spierer was born on January 17, 1991, in Scarsdale, New York, a suburb just outside of New York City. She grew up in a close, loving family. Her parents, Robert and Charlene Spierer, absolutely adored her. She had an older sister, Rebecca, and a younger brother, Randy. By all accounts, this was a tight-knit, supportive family. Now, Lauren was tiny, I mean really tiny, At 4 feet 11 inches and 95 pounds, she looked younger than she was. But don't let her size fool you. Lauren had a huge personality. She was outgoing, vivacious, always laughing. The kind of person who lit up a room when she walked in. She loved fashion. She loved music, especially indie rock. Her friends described her as loyal, fun, adventurous. She was studying fashion merchandising at Indiana University, and she had big dreams about working in the fashion industry someday. But here's something really important you need to know about Lauren. She had a serious heart condition. It's called long QT syndrome. Basically, it's a disorder that affects the heart's electrical system and can cause dangerous irregular heartbeats. In severe cases, it can even be fatal. Lauren had to be careful. She couldn't do certain things that might strain her heart. She took medication for it. Her parents were always worried about her, and that detail, her heart condition, is going to become really important later in this story. In 2011, Lauren was finishing up her sophomore year at IU. She had a boyfriend named Jesse Wolfe. They'd been dating for a while, and by most accounts, they seemed happy together. She had a solid group of friends, she was doing well in school, life was good. And then came June 2nd, 2011, the last night anyone would ever see Lauren Spierer alive. Now, if you've never been to Bloomington, Indiana, let me paint you a picture. This is a classic college town. Indiana University has about 40,000 students, and during the school year, the town basically revolves around them. The campus is beautiful. Lots of limestone buildings, tree-lined streets, that quintessential college atmosphere. But like any college town, Bloomington has its party scene, and in 2011, the heart of that party scene was a cluster of apartment buildings and townhouses just off campus. We're talking about the area around College Avenue and 11th Street. This is where Lauren lived. This is where her friends lived. And this is where she would spend her final hours. The area is dense, buildings packed close together, narrow alleys, limited street lighting. And at night, especially on weekends, it's chaotic. Students stumbling from party to party, music blaring from apartments. That kind of controlled chaos that happens when you pack thousands of young people into a small area. Now here's the thing. Most of the apartment buildings in this area had security cameras. Not inside the apartments, but in lobbies, on building exteriors, covering parking lots and entrances. So there's actually a decent amount of video footage from that night. But as we're going to see, having footage doesn't always mean having answers, because what the cameras captured that night raises more questions than it answers. All right, so let's start at the beginning. June 2nd, around midnight, Lauren starts her evening at her apartment at Smallwood Plaza, a big apartment complex where a lot of students lived. She's with her friend David Rohn. Now, David wasn't her boyfriend, remember? She's dating Jesse Wolfe. But David was a friend, and they'd been hanging out. Around 12:30 a.m., Lauren and David head to a place called Kilroy's Sports Bar. If you went to IU, you knew Kilroy's. It was the spot. Always packed, always loud, cheap drinks, the whole college bar experience. Lauren and David get to Kilroy's, and they start drinking. Security footage from the bar shows Lauren looking happy, social, normal. She's having a good time. But here's where we need to talk about something important. Lauren was drinking a lot that night. And given her small size, 95 pounds, and her heart condition, alcohol hit her harder than it would most people. At some point during the night, Lauren loses her phone, or maybe it was stolen, or maybe she just misplaced it. Nobody knows. But this is important because it means that for the rest of the night, Lauren has no way to call for help if she needs it. Around 2:30 a.m., the bar starts closing down. People start heading out, and this is where Lauren's night takes its first concerning turn. So Lauren and David leave Kilroy's and start walking back toward their apartments, but they don't go straight home. Instead, they head to another apartment building, a place called 5 North Townhomes. This is where some other friends of Lauren's lived, specifically a guy named Corey Rossman and his roommates Mike, Beth, and others. Lauren had been friends with these guys. They partied together sometimes. Now, according to what we know, Lauren and David get to 5 North sometime around 2:30 or 2:40 a.m. And here's where things get weird. Multiple witnesses say that when Lauren arrived, She was very intoxicated, like stumbling, barely able to stand, slurring her words. Some people would later describe her as appearing almost unconscious. And this is where the first major altercation of the night happens. According to reports, some of Corey's friends confronted David Rohn. They were concerned about Lauren. They thought David was being inappropriate with her, maybe trying to take advantage of her in her intoxicated state. There was pushing, shouting. It got heated. Eventually, David left. He went back to Smallwood Plaza, to Lauren's apartment. Some reports say he punched the wall in frustration. His knuckles were bleeding, but here's the critical thing. David left. He left Lauren at 5 North with Corey Rossman and the others. And that decision, that moment, might have sealed Lauren's fate. Okay, so now Lauren is at 5 North Townhomes with Corey Rossman, and what happens next is captured on security cameras, which should be helpful, right? We should be able to see exactly what happened. Except the footage just makes things more confusing and more disturbing. At approximately 2:48 a.m., a security camera in an alley behind Smallwood Plaza, Lauren's apartment building, captures something. And when investigators watched this footage, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The video shows Lauren walking, or more accurately, stumbling down the alley. She's barefoot, she's lost her shoes somewhere, and she's clearly in bad shape. She can barely walk straight. She's leaning on walls. She looks disoriented. And she's with Corey Rossman. He's helping her walk, but he doesn't look great either. He's also stumbling a bit. Now here's what's so bizarre about this. They're walking from 5 North back towards Smallwood, which is where Lauren started the evening. So it seems like maybe Corey was trying to take her home, which would be good, right? Except they never made it to her apartment. According to what Corey told police later, as they were walking, he ran into some other friends. And one of those friends was a guy named Jay Rosenbaum. Jay lived at a different building, right near where Lauren and Corey were walking. And this is where the story gets really problematic. Corey claims that he and Lauren went to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment instead of going to Lauren's place. Why? He says he was too drunk to help Lauren anymore, and that Jay said he'd take care of getting Lauren home. So Corey goes to Jay's apartment. Lauren goes with him. And then Corey says he passed out on Jay's couch. Let that sink in for a second. Lauren is barely conscious. She's lost her shoes. She can't walk straight. And the person who was helping her get home just hands her off to someone else and then passes out. Stay with me here, because this is where the timeline gets really murky. All right, so now it's sometime around 3 a.m. Lauren is at Jay Rosenbaum's apartment. Corey Rossman is passed out. And according to Jay, Lauren hung out at his place for a bit. Jay Rosenbaum lived with a roommate named Mike Beth. And this is where we need to talk about what these guys told police, because their stories are, let's just say, they're problematic. According to Jay, Lauren stayed at his apartment for about an hour and a half. He says they just hung out, talked. He says she seemed to be sobering up a bit. He says she seemed okay. Then at approximately 4:30 a.m., and remember this time, because it's crucial, Jay says Lauren decided she wanted to go home. Her apartment was just a couple blocks away, and according to Jay, even though it was 4:30 in the morning and Lauren was a tiny, intoxicated girl who'd been stumbling around barefoot all night, he let her leave, alone. He says he watched her walk to the corner of 11th Street and College Avenue. He says he watched her turn the corner. And then he says he went inside and went to bed. And that, according to Jay Rosenbaum, was the last time anyone saw Lauren Spierer. Now let me ask you something. Does any of that sound right to you? Does it seem reasonable that you would let a 95-pound girl who's been blackout drunk all night walk home alone at 4:30 in the morning? But wait, it gets worse. Jay didn't just let her leave. He didn't call anyone to come get her. He didn't call her boyfriend. He didn't walk her home himself. He didn't call a cab. He just let her go. And here's another thing. Jay and his roommate Mike Beth both lawyered up immediately. Within days of Lauren's disappearance, they had attorneys and they stopped cooperating with police. Why would you do that if you had nothing to hide? So let's jump forward a few hours. It's now Friday afternoon, June 3rd, 2011. Lauren's boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe, is trying to get in touch with her. They had plans, but she's not answering her phone. Actually, she doesn't have her phone. Remember, she lost it the night before. But she's not answering her apartment door either. Jesse is getting worried. This isn't like Lauren. Even if she went out partying, she'd usually check in. Something feels wrong. He starts calling her friends. Has anyone seen Lauren? Does anyone know where she is? And this is when people start piecing together the timeline from the night before. Someone mentions seeing her at Kilroy's. Someone else mentions she went to 5 North. Someone else says she was at Jay's apartment. Jesse goes to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment and confronts him. Where's Lauren? What happened? And Jay tells him, I let her walk home at 4:30 a.m. Jesse is horrified. He immediately calls Lauren's parents in New York. Robert and Charlene Spierer get the call that every parent dreads. Their daughter is missing. Nobody's seen her since 4:30 that morning. It's now been more than 12 hours. They're on the next flight to Indiana. By that evening, the Bloomington Police Department has officially opened a missing persons case. And what starts as a local search is about to become national news. The search for Lauren Spierer became one of the biggest missing person searches in Indiana history. Within 24 hours, hundreds of volunteers were combing through Bloomington. They searched every alley, every dumpster, every abandoned building. They searched the woods surrounding the campus. They searched the nearby lakes and quarries. The FBI got involved. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Helicopters with thermal imaging scanned from above. Posters with Lauren's face went up on every street corner. Local businesses donated resources. Students organized search parties. Robert and Charlene Spierer were there for all of it. And I cannot even imagine their anguish. They're in a strange city. Their daughter is missing, and they're dependent on the police and these friends of Lauren's, some of whom are acting very suspicious. The Spierers did interview after interview. They begged anyone with information to come forward. They offered a reward. Eventually, it would grow to $250,000. The case got national media attention. CNN covered it. Nancy Grace covered it. It was everywhere. But despite all of this, despite the massive search, despite the media attention, despite the reward money, no trace of Lauren was found. Not her clothes, not her shoes, not her jewelry, nothing. It was as if she'd simply vanished into thin air. Now, remember how I said there were security cameras all over this area? Well, investigators spent weeks analyzing every second of footage from every camera, and they were able to piece together a pretty detailed timeline of Lauren's movements, up to a point. We have footage of her at Kilroy's sports bar, looking happy and social. We have footage of her at 2:48 a.m. in the alley, barely able to walk, with Corey Rossman. But here's what we don't have. We don't have any footage of Lauren after 4:30 a.m. Jay Rosenbaum says he watched her walk to the corner of 11th and College and turn the corner. But there's no camera footage of that, and there should be. There were cameras in that area, so either Jay's timeline is wrong, or Lauren somehow avoided every camera after that point, or something else happened. Investigators also looked at every vehicle that was in the area that night. They ran license plates, they interviewed owners, they checked to see if any cars had been cleaned or detailed suspiciously in the days after Lauren disappeared. Again, nothing. It was like Lauren had just evaporated. So naturally, investigators focused heavily on the people who were with Lauren that final night. And the more they dug, the more problematic things became. Let's start with David Rohn, the guy Lauren started the evening with. David cooperated with police. He took a polygraph test and passed. His story seemed to check out. He seemed genuinely distraught about Lauren's disappearance. But then there's Corey Rossman. Corey also talked to police initially, but his story had some inconsistencies. And remember, he's the one who was with Lauren in that alley footage, and then he's the one who handed her off to Jay Rosenbaum. Corey lawyered up pretty quickly. He stopped doing interviews. Then there's Jay Rosenbaum and his roommate Mike Beth. These two are the most problematic. They both got lawyers immediately. They both invoked their Fifth Amendment rights and refused to answer certain questions. Now, let me be clear. Getting a lawyer doesn't mean you're guilty. It's actually the smart thing to do when you're being investigated. But the optics are bad. If you're innocent and a friend is missing, wouldn't you do everything you could to help find them? And here's another weird thing. According to reports, Jay and Mike's cell phones were both used that night after 4:30 a.m. after Jay claims Lauren left. They were texting people. They were calling people. But they won't say who they were calling or what they were saying. They won't turn over their phone records. Their lawyers blocked it. Why? What are they hiding? All right, so let's talk about the theories, because without a body, without evidence, all we have are theories. Theory number 1, Lauren died accidentally, and someone covered it up. Here's how this might have happened. Remember Lauren's heart condition, long QT syndrome? It's a condition that can cause sudden cardiac arrest, especially when combined with alcohol, drugs, or physical exertion. Some people believe that Lauren may have had a cardiac episode that night. Maybe it happened at Jay's apartment. Maybe she collapsed. Maybe she stopped breathing. And whoever was with her panicked. They're college kids. There are drugs or alcohol involved. They're scared. Instead of calling 911, they decide to hide the body. This theory would explain why Jay and Mike lawyered up immediately. It would explain why their stories are so weird. It would explain why there's no evidence of foul play, because technically, there wasn't any. Lauren's parents have said they believe something like this is possible. They just want to know the truth. They just want to bring their daughter home. But here's the problem with this theory. Where's the body? Bloomington was searched extensively. Cadaver dogs covered miles and miles of terrain. If someone had panicked and dumped a body, you'd think it would have been found by now, unless whoever hid her knew exactly what they were doing. Theory number 2, Lauren was abducted by a stranger. Think about it. She's walking alone at 4:30 in the morning. She's tiny, she's barefoot, she's intoxicated. She's literally the perfect victim for someone with bad intentions. Maybe someone was driving through the area, saw her, and grabbed her. It would only take a few seconds. One person could easily overpower her. This theory is supported by the fact that there have been other attacks on women in the Bloomington area over the years. In 2011, there were reports of women being followed, being grabbed. The area wasn't as safe as people wanted to believe. There's also a registered offender who lived in the area at the time. Investigators looked into him. They searched his property, but they couldn't find any evidence connecting him to Lauren. The problem with the stranger abduction theory is that it requires a lot of coincidence. Someone would have had to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and they would have had to act fast, grab her, get her into a vehicle, and drive away before anyone saw anything. It's possible, but is it likely? Theory number 3, and this is the one most people believe. Someone Lauren knew is responsible for what happened to her. Here's why this theory makes sense. The people who were with Lauren that night, Corey Rossman, Jay Rosenbaum, Mike Beth, their behavior has been suspicious from the start. They lawyered up immediately. They won't answer questions. Their timelines don't quite add up. And most damning, they haven't shown the kind of concern you'd expect from friends whose friend is missing. Let me give you an example. In the weeks after Lauren disappeared, Jesse Wolf, her boyfriend, was out searching every day. He was putting up posters. He was talking to anyone who would listen. He was desperate to find her. Meanwhile, Jay and Mike, they stayed quiet. They went about their lives. They transferred schools. They moved away. Now, I'm not saying they're definitely guilty, but I am saying their behavior is suspicious. Some investigators believe that something happened at Jay's apartment that night. Maybe there was a confrontation. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe Lauren had a medical emergency and they panicked. Or maybe, and this is darker, maybe something intentional happened. Whatever it was, if this theory is correct, then Jay and Mike know what happened to Lauren, and they've been keeping that secret for over 13 years. While the police were investigating, Lauren's parents were doing their own investigation, and they didn't hold back. Robert and Charlene Spierer hired private investigators. They hired psychics. They followed every possible lead. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, money they didn't necessarily have, trying to find their daughter. They also weren't shy about naming suspects. In interviews, they made it clear they believed the people Lauren was with that night knew more than they were saying. In 2012, the Spierers filed a civil lawsuit against some of the people who were with Lauren. It wasn't about money. It was about trying to force them to talk, to answer questions under oath. But even that didn't work. The defendants continued to invoke their Fifth Amendment rights. The case was eventually dismissed. It was devastating for the Spierers. Every avenue seemed to lead to a dead end. It's now been over 13 years since Lauren Spierer disappeared, and her case is still unsolved. Over the years, there have been occasional developments, a potential sighting here, a new tip there, but nothing has panned out. In 2018, investigators conducted a major search in a rural area south of Bloomington based on a tip from a psychic. They brought in cadaver dogs. They dug, they searched, they found nothing. In 2021, on the 10-year anniversary of her disappearance, Bloomington police announced they were still actively working the case. They said they'd received over 3,700 tips over the years and had investigated every single one. But still, no Lauren. The Spierer family has never given up. Every year on June 3rd, they hold a vigil. They release balloons. They keep Lauren's memory alive. Charlene Spierer has said in interviews that not knowing is the worst part. Is Lauren alive somewhere? Is she being held against her will? Is she dead? Where is her body? Not having answers is a special kind of torture. So what happened to the people involved in this case? Jesse Wolf, Lauren's boyfriend, has stayed relatively public about the case. He's done interviews over the years, he's maintained his innocence, and has continued to call for answers. He eventually moved on with his life, but by all accounts, he's never forgotten Lauren. David Rohn, the friend Lauren started the evening with, has also maintained his innocence and has cooperated with investigators. But Corey Rossman, Jay Rosenbaum, and Mike Beth? They've all basically disappeared from public life. They left Indiana University. They moved to different states. They've kept low profiles. None of them have ever publicly spoken about what happened that night beyond their initial statements to police. And that silence speaks volumes. Because if you were innocent, if you truly didn't know what happened to your friend, wouldn't you want to do everything possible to help find her? Wouldn't you want to clear your name? But instead, they've chosen silence. And that silence has haunted the Spierer family for over a decade. So is there any hope that Lauren's case will ever be solved? Honestly, it's hard to say. Time is not on the side of this investigation. Memories fade, people move, evidence degrades, but there are reasons to be hopeful. Technology has improved dramatically since 2011. DNA analysis is better. Cell phone tracking is more sophisticated. Digital forensics have advanced. There's also the possibility that someone will talk. Maybe someone who knows what happened will develop a conscience. Maybe someone on their deathbed will confess. Maybe someone will want to clear their conscience. It's happened before in cold cases. Sometimes all it takes is one person deciding that the burden of keeping a secret is too heavy to carry anymore. Lauren's case is still open. It's still being actively investigated. And the Bloomington Police Department has made it clear they won't give up. Neither will Lauren's family, and neither should we. This particular story I'm about to tell you is one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history. And I'm warning you right now, this case has a twist that's going to make your blood run cold. September 20th, 1988, Belen, New Mexico. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, and a 19-year-old girl named Tara Calico is getting ready to go on her daily bike ride along Highway 47, a route she's taken hundreds of times before. Her mother watches her leave. Tara waves goodbye. She's wearing a pink Sony Walkman. She's got her bike. She's happy. It's just a normal day. Except it wasn't normal, because Tara Calico would never come home from that bike ride. By that evening, her mother would find Tara's bike abandoned on the side of the road. By the next day, search parties would be combing the desert. And by the following year, a photograph would surface that would turn this from a missing persons case into something far more sinister. Because that photograph, a Polaroid found in a parking lot 1,600 miles away, appeared to show Tara bound and gagged in the back of a van, lying next to another child, both of them looking absolutely terrified. And here's what makes this case so incredibly disturbing. Despite massive investigations, despite FBI involvement, despite advances in technology, we still don't know for certain what happened to Tara Calico. We don't know if that girl in the photo is really her. We don't know if she's alive or dead. We don't know who took her or why. Go ahead and smash that like button. I know, you're going to forget by the end, but do it now. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and honestly, after you hear this story, you're going to be too disturbed to remember anyway. Alright, so let's talk about who Tara was, because understanding her makes what happened so much more tragic. Tara Lee Calico was born on February 28, 1969, in Belen, New Mexico. Belen is a small town, we're talking about 7,000 people, located about 30 miles south of Albuquerque. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where people don't lock their doors, where you'd never think something truly terrible could happen. Tara grew up in a loving family. Her parents, John and Patty Calico, absolutely adored her. She had a younger sister, Michelle. By all accounts, this was a happy, normal family. Now, Tara was special. And I don't mean that in some cliche way. I mean, she genuinely stood out. She was smart, like really smart. She was a psychology major at the University of New Mexico. She had a 3.7 GPA. She was on track to graduate with honors. But she wasn't just book smart. Tara was athletic, outgoing, well-liked. She had a serious boyfriend named Chris. They'd been dating for years and were talking about getting married. She had close friends. She was involved in her community. And she was disciplined. Every single day, rain or shine, Tara would go on a bike ride. It was her routine, her meditation, her way of staying fit and clearing her head. Her route was always the same. She'd ride south on Highway 47 from her house, do about 18 to 20 miles round trip, and come back. The whole thing took a couple hours. She'd done it so many times, she could probably do it with her eyes closed. But here's something important. Tara was cautious. She wasn't reckless. Her mother had actually warned her about riding alone on that highway because there had been reports of people harassing cyclists, cars getting too close, people yelling things. And Tara took those warnings seriously. She even told her mom, "If I'm not back by noon, come look for me." September 20th, 1988 would be the day that her mother would have to do exactly that. It's Tuesday, September 20th, 1988. The time is about 9:30 in the morning. Tara gets up, has breakfast with her family. She's in a good mood. She's talking about her classes at university. She's excited because she and her boyfriend Chris have plans for that evening, just a normal morning. Around 9:30 a.m., Tara gets ready for her bike ride. She puts on her shorts, her t-shirt. She grabs her pink Sony Walkman, one of those cassette player things that you'd clip to your belt. She's got her favorite tape in there. She's ready. Her mother, Patty, watches her get on her bike. And remember what I said earlier? Tara had told her mom, "If I'm not back by noon, come look for me." Patty checks the time, 9:30 a.m. That means Tara should be back by 11:30, maybe noon at the latest. Tara waves goodbye. She rides off down the street, heading toward Highway 47. Her mother watches her go. And that was the last time Patty Calico would ever see her daughter. Now, here's what we know about Tara's ride that morning. Several people saw her. We have witnesses who place her on Highway 47 at various points during her ride. She's riding south, going at a good pace, listening to her Walkman. Everything seems normal, but then something happened. And what exactly that something was is what investigators have been trying to figure out for over 35 years. All right, so it's now noon. Patty Calico is at home, and she's starting to worry. Tara always, and I mean always, came back from her rides by noon. She was punctual, disciplined. If she said she'd be home by a certain time, she was home. But noon comes and goes. No Tara. 12:15, still no Tara. 12:30. Now Patty is seriously worried. She gets in her car and drives the route that Tara always takes. She's looking for her daughter. She's looking for the bike. She's looking for any sign of what might have happened. And remember, this is 1988. There are no cell phones. There's no way to just call or text Tara and ask where she is. If something went wrong, there's no way for Tara to call for help. Patty drives the entire route. She's scanning both sides of the highway. She's looking in ditches. She's looking in the fields. And at first, she doesn't see anything. But then, at a certain point on Highway 47, about 12 miles from their house, Patty sees something that makes her heart stop. Tire tracks, fresh tire tracks, going off the highway and into the sandy shoulder. And these aren't bike tracks. These are vehicle tracks. And they're all over the place, like a vehicle had stopped abruptly or swerved or been driving erratically. But there's no sign of Tara, no sign of her bike, nothing. Patty immediately drives to the Valencia County Sheriff's Office and reports her daughter missing, and that's when the investigation began. Within hours, deputies were out on Highway 47 searching the area where Patty had seen those tire tracks, and they found something that confirmed Patty's worst fears. They found pieces of Tara's Sony Walkman, the pink one she'd been wearing that morning. It was shattered, broken into pieces, scattered on the side of the road near those tire tracks. But here's what's strange. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, no skid marks indicating a vehicle had hit a cyclist, just the broken Walkman and those tire tracks. So what happened? Did a vehicle hit Tara? Did she crash? Was she taken? The next day, search parties organized. We're talking hundreds of volunteers, friends, family, neighbors, people from all over the county. They fanned out across the area, searching every inch of the desert, every arroyo, every abandoned building. They brought in helicopters. They brought in search dogs. The dogs picked up Tara's scent from her bike route, but the trail went cold at that spot where the tire tracks and the broken Walkman were found. It was like she'd just vanished. Now investigators started interviewing witnesses, and this is where things get interesting and disturbing. Several people reported seeing Tara on her bike that morning, but some people reported seeing something else. A light-colored pickup truck, maybe a Ford, following Tara, getting close to her, almost like it was harassing her. One witness said they saw this truck drive by Tara multiple times, going past her, turning around, coming back, like it was circling her. Another witness said they saw a pickup truck stopped on the shoulder near where the Walkman pieces were found. They said they saw someone, maybe two people, standing near the truck, but they didn't think much of it at the time. And here's what's absolutely infuriating. Nobody got a license plate. Nobody got a clear description of the driver. Nobody stopped to see if everything was okay. And by the time investigators started putting these witness reports together, it was too late. Whoever had been in that truck was long gone. So investigators started focusing on the most logical theory. Tara had been abducted by whoever was in that pickup truck. And pretty quickly, two names kept coming up. Two local guys who had a reputation for harassing women and who drove a vehicle matching the description of the truck witnesses had seen. Their names were Lawrence Romero Jr. and his friend. Now, I'm going to be careful here because neither of these men has ever been charged with anything, but they were absolutely suspects, and here's why. Multiple people in the community said that Lawrence and his friend were known for driving around and harassing female cyclists and joggers. They'd yell things. They'd get too close. They'd try to run people off the road. It was like a sick game to them. And on the morning Tara disappeared, several witnesses placed a truck matching the description of Lawrence's truck on Highway 47 in the area where Tara was riding. But here's the problem. Lawrence had an alibi. He said he was working that morning. His employer backed him up. Investigators searched his property. They searched his truck. They interviewed him extensively. But they couldn't find any physical evidence linking him to Tara's disappearance. No fibers from Tara's clothes in his truck, no blood, no DNA, nothing. And remember, this is 1988. DNA technology was in its infancy. Forensic techniques weren't what they are today. So even if there had been trace evidence, it might not have been detected. Still, investigators were convinced these guys knew something. The sheriff at the time even publicly stated he believed Lawrence was involved. But without physical evidence, without a body, there was nothing they could charge him with. And so the case went cold. Weeks turned into months. The searches stopped, the media attention faded, And Tara's family was left in agony, not knowing what happened to their daughter. But then, in June of 1989, 9 months after Tara disappeared, something happened that would reignite the case and capture national attention. A photograph was found, and when you see this photograph, you'll understand why this case became one of the most talked about mysteries in America. June 15, 1989, Port St. Joe, Florida. That's about 1,600 miles from Belen, New Mexico. A woman is getting out of her car in a convenience store parking lot when she notices something on the ground next to her car. It's a Polaroid photograph. She picks it up. And what she sees in that photo makes her blood run cold. The photo shows two people in what appears to be the back of a van or some kind of vehicle. There's a girl, looks to be a teenager or a young woman. And there's a boy, looks to be around 10 years old. And here's what's so disturbing. Both of them have tape over their mouths. The girl's hands appear to be bound. They're both lying down. And the look in their eyes, it's pure terror. This woman immediately calls the police, and when the police see this photo, they know they're looking at possible kidnapping victims. But who are these people? And where was this photo taken? The photo gets sent to the FBI. It gets distributed to law enforcement agencies across the country. And when it reaches the Valencia County Sheriff's Office in New Mexico, Patty Calico sees it. And she immediately says, "That's my daughter. That's Tara." Now let me describe this photo in more detail because it's crucial to understanding this case. The girl in the photo has long dark hair. She's wearing what looks like casual clothes. She's lying on her side. Her hands are definitely bound. You can see tape or rope around her wrists. Tape covers her mouth and her eyes. She looks terrified, but also resigned, like she knows she's in serious danger. Next to her is a boy. He's younger, maybe 10 or 11. He's also bound and gagged. He looks equally terrified. But here's what really got people's attention. In the photo, next to the girl, there's a book. And people were able to identify that book. It's My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, a book that Tara was known to have been reading shortly before she disappeared. There's also a reflection in the photo, possibly from a window, that some experts have analyzed. When Patty Calico saw this photo, she was absolutely certain it was Tara. She could tell by her daughter's build, her hair, her facial features. She said she'd know her daughter anywhere. But here's where things get complicated. So the big question, is that girl in the Polaroid really Tara Calico? Patty Calico says yes, absolutely. She's never wavered on this. She believes with 100% certainty that the girl in that photo is her daughter. Many investigators who worked the case also believe it's Tara. The timing makes sense. The photo surfaced 9 months after Tara disappeared. The book in the photo is one Tara had been reading. The girl's physical description matches Tara. But here's where it gets murky. The FBI analyzed the photo. They brought in forensic experts, and their conclusion was inconclusive. They said they couldn't definitively say whether or not the girl in the photo was Tara. Some experts said the girl's facial features didn't quite match. The nose was slightly different. The shape of the face wasn't quite right. But supporters of the theory that it is Tara argue that photo quality in 1989 wasn't great, especially for Polaroids, and people can look different depending on lighting, angle, and especially if they're under extreme duress. Then there's the question of the boy in the photo. Who is he? Some people believed he might be Michael Henley, a boy from New Mexico who disappeared while camping in April 1988, about 5 months before Tara disappeared. His family even thought the boy in the photo might be him. But here's where this theory falls apart. In 1990, Michael Henley's remains were found near where he'd disappeared. It was determined he'd died of exposure. He'd gotten lost and couldn't find his way back. So it definitely wasn't Michael in the photo. So if the boy isn't Michael Henley, then who is he? And if the girl is Tara, where were they being held? Who took this photo? And why would someone leave it in a parking lot in Florida? Let me tell you, this gets even stranger. All right, so let's assume for a moment that the girl in the photo really is Tara. That means several things. First, it means that 9 months after she disappeared, Tara was still alive. She was being held somewhere, probably by whoever abducted her from Highway 47. Second, it means whoever took her also had at least one other victim, that boy in the photo. Third, and this is the darkest part, it means someone took this photo intentionally. Someone bound these victims, posed them, and took a Polaroid of them. Why would someone do that? Some investigators believe the photo was meant to be taunting, like, "Look what I did, look what I have, and you can't stop me." It's a power thing, a control thing. Serial offenders have been known to do this, to document their crimes as trophies. Others think maybe the photo was taken by someone who wasn't the primary abductor. Maybe someone who had access to wherever these victims were being held. Maybe someone who felt guilty and left the photo in a public place, hoping someone would find it and help. But here's what really disturbs me. If that photo is real, if those are real victims being held against their will, then why was it left in Florida? Tara disappeared in New Mexico. That's over 1,600 miles away. Did whoever took her transport her across state lines? Were they moving around? Or was there some kind of network, multiple people involved and different locations? The FBI looked into the possibility of a trafficking ring. In the late 1980s, there were concerns about organized abduction and trafficking operations, but they never found any concrete evidence linking Tara's case to anything like that. Still, the photo raised more questions than answers. Now here's where this case takes another bizarre turn. After that first Polaroid was found and publicized, other photos started surfacing. Over the years, several more Polaroids appeared, left in parking lots, mailed to news stations, found in random places. Some showed people bound and gagged in vehicles. Some showed people in various states of distress. And every time a new photo appeared, people would ask, "Is this Tara? Is this another victim?" Some of these photos were eventually debunked. People came forward and said, "That's actually me in that photo. My friend and I were goofing around. It was a joke." Which is sick, by the way. Imagine causing that kind of false hope or distress to families of missing people. Other photos remain unexplained. Nobody knows who the people in them are or whether they're real victims or staged images. This led some investigators to believe that the original Polaroid, the one from 1989, might have also been staged. Maybe it was a cruel hoax. Maybe someone thought it would be funny to create a fake photo of bound victims. But Patty Calico doesn't believe that. She's seen that photo analyzed by multiple experts. She's looked at it herself thousands of times, and she remains convinced that's her daughter. And honestly, looking at that photo, at the genuine fear in those victims' eyes, it's hard to believe someone was just goofing around. In 2008, nearly 20 years after the photo was found, Scotland Yard got involved. They're known for having some of the best forensic photo analysts in the world. Patty Calico reached out to them, hoping modern technology could finally give definitive answers. Scotland Yard agreed to analyze the photo. They used advanced facial recognition software. They looked at bone structure, ear shape, distinctive features. They compared the girl in the photo to confirmed photos of Tara, and their conclusion was, it's not Tara. Scotland Yard said that based on their analysis, they did not believe the girl in the Polaroid was Tara Calico. They said the facial features didn't match closely enough. This was devastating for Patty. She disagreed with their conclusion. She still believes it's Tara. And here's the thing, facial recognition technology, even in 2008, wasn't perfect. And analyzing a decades-old Polaroid of someone in extreme distress, someone whose face might look different due to trauma, weight loss, stress, is incredibly difficult. So even with Scotland Yard's analysis, the debate continues. Some people believe their conclusion, others think they're wrong. To this day, the FBI has not definitively ruled whether the girl in the photo is Tara. It remains classified as inconclusive. But whether or not that photo shows Tara, one thing is certain. Tara Calico disappeared on September 20th, 1988, and someone knows what happened to her. All right, so let's get back to the original investigation in New Mexico. Because while the Polaroid was getting all the national attention, local investigators never stopped pursuing their original suspects. Remember Lawrence Romero Jr. and his friend? The guys who were known for harassing cyclists? Well, investigators never let them go. Over the years, deputies continued to interview people who knew them. They followed up on tips. They kept pressure on these guys. And in the early 2000s, something interesting happened. Lawrence Romero Sr., the father of Lawrence Jr., allegedly made some comments to people about his son's involvement in Tara's disappearance. According to reports, the elder Romero told multiple people that his son and friend had accidentally hit Tara with their truck. He said they panicked and hid her body in the desert. Now let me be clear, Lawrence Sr. later denied saying these things. And he died in 2005, so we can't verify these claims. But investigators took these reports seriously. In 2008, they conducted a massive search in an area where Lawrence Sr. allegedly said the body was hidden. They brought in cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, excavation equipment. They searched for days, and they found nothing. So either the information was wrong, or the body had been moved, or it was hidden so well that even modern technology couldn't detect it. But here's what really frustrates investigators. Lawrence Romero Jr. has never been formally cleared as a suspect. The Valencia County Sheriff's Office has made it clear they still consider him a person of interest. But without physical evidence, without a confession, without a body, there's nothing they can charge him with. And so the case remains open. Now, while the local harassment theory is the most commonly accepted explanation, there are other theories about what happened to Tara. The first theory suggests that Tara was abducted by someone passing through, a truck driver maybe, or someone traveling on Highway 47 who saw an opportunity and took it. This would explain why the case went cold so quickly. The perpetrator would have been long gone before anyone even realized Tara was missing. The problem with this theory is that it requires a lot of coincidence. A stranger would have had to be on that specific road at that specific time, would have had to overpower Tara, get her and her bike into a vehicle, and disappear, all without leaving significant evidence. The second theory paints a picture that Tara staged her own disappearance. Some people have suggested that maybe Tara wanted to start a new life, that maybe she ran away voluntarily. But this theory doesn't hold up at all. Tara was happy. She was doing well in school. She was in love with her boyfriend. She had a close relationship with her family. There's absolutely no evidence she wanted to leave. Plus, the broken Walkman and the tire track suggest something violent happened. And then the third theory, this one's darker. Someone Tara knew was involved. Not the obvious suspects, but someone else. Maybe someone who had been obsessed with her. Maybe someone who had been stalking her. There were reports of a man who had been making Tara uncomfortable in the weeks before she disappeared, someone who had been showing up places where she was. But investigators looked into this person and couldn't find any evidence linking them to the disappearance. Theory number 4, the Polaroid theory. If that really is Tara in the photo, then she was taken by someone who transported her out of state, possibly as part of a larger operation. This is the theory Patty Calico believes. But again, without concrete evidence, it's all speculation. Now I need to talk about Patty Calico because this woman is absolutely remarkable. For over 35 years, Patty has never stopped searching for her daughter, never stopped fighting, never given up hope. She's done thousands of interviews. She's appeared on every major news program you can think of. She's worked with psychics, private investigators, journalists, anyone who might help find Tara. She's put up billboards. She's distributed tens of thousands of flyers. She's maintained a website dedicated to Tara's case. And every year on September 20th, the anniversary of Tara's disappearance, Patty holds a vigil. She releases balloons. She keeps Tara's memory alive. But here's what's so heartbreaking. Patty has said in interviews that she believes Tara is still alive. She believes that one day, Tara will come home. Now, most investigators don't share that belief. After 35 years, the likelihood that Tara is still alive is, well, it's almost impossible. But Patty refuses to give up hope. And honestly, who are we to take that hope away from her? In 2006, Patty wrote a book called Unofficially Presumed Dead. In it, she detailed her search for Tara, her frustrations with the investigation, and her theories about what happened. She's been critical of law enforcement at times, feeling that they didn't do enough in the crucial early days of the investigation. But she's also grateful for the officers who've continued to work the case over the decades. Patty's husband, John, Tara's father, passed away in 2002. He died without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. That's a pain I can't even imagine. But Patty continues on, for Tara, for herself, for justice. So where does the case stand today in 2025? Officially, Tara Calico's disappearance remains an open, active investigation. The Valencia County Sheriff's Office still considers it a priority cold case. Over the years, they've followed up on hundreds of tips. Every few years, there's a new lead, a new search, a new person of interest. In 2013, investigators announced they were using new DNA technology to analyze evidence from the case. But nothing conclusive came from that analysis. In 2018, on the 30th anniversary of Tara's disappearance, the case got renewed media attention. New witnesses came forward with information, but again, nothing led to a breakthrough. The big problem is this: without a body, without physical evidence directly linking a suspect to the crime, it's almost impossible to prosecute anyone. And as time goes on, the chance of solving this case diminishes. Witnesses die or their memories fade. Evidence degrades. People move away. Lawrence Romero Jr., the primary suspect, is still alive. He's never been charged. He's never publicly admitted to any involvement. And he likely never will, because why would he? Without concrete evidence, he can't be prosecuted. But investigators haven't given up. They still believe this case can be solved. So here's the question everyone wants answered. Will we ever know what happened to Tara Calico? Honestly, I don't know. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. The most likely scenario, based on the evidence we have, is that Tara was abducted by the people in that pickup truck who had been harassing her. Whether it started as harassment that turned violent, or whether it was always an intended abduction, we don't know. Most investigators believe Tara died that day or shortly after. They believe her body was hidden somewhere in the vast New Mexico desert, an area so huge and so remote that finding remains is nearly impossible. The Polaroid remains a mystery. Maybe it was Tara, maybe it wasn't. We may never know for certain. But here's what I believe. Someone knows what happened. Whether it's one person or multiple people, someone out there carries the truth about Tara's final moments. Maybe it's guilt that keeps them silent. Maybe it's fear of prosecution. Maybe it's pure selfishness. But that person has robbed Patty Calico of closure. They've robbed Tara's family of the ability to lay her to rest. They've robbed Tara of her entire future, and that person has to live with that. Every single day, there's always a chance that new technology could break the case. DNA analysis continues to improve. Maybe something that was untestable in 1988 could yield results today. There's also the chance that someone's conscience will finally break. Maybe on their deathbed someone will confess. Maybe someone who's been carrying this secret will finally decide the burden is too heavy. It's happened before in cold cases. Sometimes decades later, the truth finally comes out. So while I can't promise this case will be solved, I can say this: we can't stop talking about it. We can't let Tara be forgotten. Because the moment we forget is the moment justice becomes impossible. It's been over 35 years. Tara would be 55 years old now if she's still alive. She could have had a career, a family, a whole life. All of that was stolen from her. And her mother, Patty, has spent more than half her life searching, more than half her life waiting for an answer that may never come. I don't know if that girl in the Polaroid was Tara. I don't know if Tara suffered or if her end was quick. I don't know if her remains will ever be found. But I know this: Tara Calico was a real person. She had dreams and plans and people who loved her. She deserves to be remembered. She deserves justice. And her family deserves answers. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened on Highway 47 on September 20th, 1988. And I genuinely hope, that person comes forward. Because this family has suffered long. Trust me, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This case makes absolutely no sense. February 14th, 2000, Valentine's Day, Shelby, North Carolina. It's the middle of the night. It's pouring rain. The temperature is in the 40s. Conditions are miserable. And in this weather, a 9-year-old girl named Asha Degree gets out of her warm bed, packs a backpack, and walks out of her house, alone, in the dark, in the storm. Now, that alone is strange enough. But here's what makes this case so incredibly bizarre. Asha was terrified of the dark. She was afraid of storms. She wouldn't even go into her own yard at night without an adult. This was a child who slept with the lights on. So why would she voluntarily leave her safe, warm home in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm? And it gets stranger. Multiple witnesses saw Asha that night walking along Highway 18, a dark, dangerous highway with no sidewalks. They saw her walking purposefully, like she was heading somewhere, like she had a destination in mind, and then she vanished. She walked off that highway and was never seen again. It's been over 24 years, and investigators still can't answer the most basic question about this case. Why did Asha leave her house that night? Where was she going? And what happened to her? This case is going to frustrate you. It's going to confuse you, because every single piece of evidence just raises more questions. So let's dive in. Asha Jakila Degree was born on August 5, 1990, in Shelby, North Carolina. Shelby is a small town, about 20,000 people, in the western part of the state, about 45 miles west of Charlotte. It's the kind of town where people know their neighbors, where kids play outside, where you'd never think something like this could happen. Asha lived with her parents, Harold and Akila Degree, and her older brother O'Brien, who was 10 at the time. By every single account, this was a close, loving, stable family. Harold worked at a printing company. Akila worked at a facility for people with disabilities. They were hardworking, devoted parents who loved their children deeply. And Asha? She was a sweet, shy, well-behaved little girl. Her teachers described her as quiet, respectful, and a good student. She got good grades. She never got in trouble. She was the kind of kid every teacher loved to have in class. Asha loved basketball. She was on a local youth team, and she took it seriously. She practiced all the time. She had a game scheduled for that Monday, February 14th, but it had been canceled due to bad weather. This detail is going to become important later. Now here's what you really need to understand about Asha. She was not an adventurous kid. She was not the type to wander off. She was cautious, careful. She didn't like taking risks. And most importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, Asha was terrified of the dark. She was afraid of storms. She wouldn't go outside at night by herself. She slept with a nightlight. Sometimes she'd even get scared and crawl into bed with her parents. This was not a child who would voluntarily walk out into a dark, stormy night. It goes against everything in her personality. So what happened that made her do exactly that? That's what we're here to figure out. Let's talk about the Degree family's house because the layout is important for understanding this case. The Degrees lived in a modest, single-story home on Oakcrest Street. It's a quiet residential neighborhood, safe, the kind of place where kids ride their bikes and people wave to each other. The house itself was small but comfortable. Asha and her brother O'Brien shared a bedroom. Their beds were on opposite sides of the room. Harold and Akila's bedroom was just down the hall, close enough that they could hear if either of the kids got up in the night. The family had a routine, a structure. Harold and Akila were what you'd call strict but fair parents. They kept close tabs on their children. They knew where Asha and O'Brien were at all times. The kids had chores, they had rules. This wasn't a chaotic household where kids just did whatever they wanted. On weeknights, the kids went to bed early, usually around 8 or 8:30 p.m. They had school the next day. Routine was important. And here's something crucial. The house was secure. The doors were locked at night. There was no way for someone to get in or out without making noise, without being noticed. So when I tell you what happened on the night of February 13th, 2000, you need to remember all of this. You need to remember that Asha was not a rebellious kid, that this was not a house where children could just slip out unnoticed, that this family was close and attentive, because what happened that night defies all logic. So let's walk through Sunday, February 13th, 2000. This is the day before Asha disappeared, and I'm going to give you a minute-by-minute account because investigators have reconstructed this day in incredible detail. It's a normal Sunday. The Degree family goes to church in the morning. They're regular churchgoers. After church, they come home, the kids do homework, they watch TV. Normal stuff. Remember, Asha had a basketball game scheduled for Monday, but it had been canceled because of weather. She was disappointed about that. She'd been looking forward to it. But it wasn't a huge deal. There'd be other games. In the afternoon, Harold's brother, Asha's uncle, comes over to visit. The family hangs out together. Again, everything is completely normal. No tension, no arguments, no indication that anything is wrong. Around 6 p.m., the family has dinner together. They're all at the table, talking, laughing. Harold would later tell investigators that Asha seemed completely fine, happy, normal. After dinner, Asha takes a bath. Then she and O'Brien go to their bedroom to get ready for bed. Aquila comes in to say goodnight. She tucks them in. She tells them she loves them, just like she did every night. Around 8:30 p.m., both kids are in bed. The house settles in for the night. Now, normally, this is where the story would end for the evening. Kids asleep, parents watching TV or getting ready for bed themselves. A quiet Sunday night. But around 9 p.m., the power goes out. There's a storm moving through the area, heavy rain, thunder, lightning, and the electricity cuts out. In the Degree household, this is a bit of an issue because Asha is afraid of the dark, remember? So Harold gets up and checks on the kids. He uses a flashlight to look in their room. Both kids are in their beds. They're okay. He reassures them, tells them the power will come back on soon, and it does. About an hour later, around 10 p.m., the power comes back. Harold checks on the kids again, both still in bed. Everything's fine. Harold and Aquila go to bed themselves around 10:30 or 11 p.m. They're both tired. They've got work in the morning, and that's when the timeline gets murky. Because sometime between 10:30 p.m. and 2:30 a.m., Asha Degree got out of bed, got dressed, packed a backpack, and left her house. And nobody saw her do it. Okay, so here's what investigators were able to piece together about the hours between 10:30 p.m. on Sunday night and 6:30 a.m. Monday morning. Around 12:30 a.m., so now we're in the early hours of Monday, February 14th, Harold wakes up. He's a light sleeper, and he's got work early. He gets up to use the bathroom, and out of habit, he checks on the kids. He looks into their bedroom. It's dark, but he can make out two shapes in the beds. Both kids appear to be sleeping. He doesn't turn on the light because he doesn't want to wake them. He goes back to bed. But here's the thing. Investigators would later question whether both kids were actually in their beds at that moment. The room was dark. Harold just glanced in. Could Asha have already been gone, and he just thought she was there? Or did she leave after 12:30 a.m.? We don't know for certain, but what we do know is that around 2:30 a.m., Harold wakes up again. This time, he actually gets up and goes into the kid's bedroom. He turns on the light. O'Brien is in his bed asleep, but Asha's bed is empty. She's gone. Now Harold doesn't panic immediately. Maybe she got up to use the bathroom. Maybe she went to her parents' room because of the storm. He checks the bathroom, he checks his bedroom, he checks the living room. Asha is not in the house. Harold wakes up Aquila. They search the house together. They check every room, every closet, under beds. Nothing. Asha is not there. They check the doors. The front door's unlocked. Normally, Harold locks all the doors before bed. But this door is unlocked. That's when the panic really sets in. Harold and Aquila wake up O'Brien and ask him if he knows where Asha is. He's confused, groggy. He says he doesn't know. He says he was asleep. It's now about 2:45 or 3 a.m. They call 911. But here's where the timeline gets really important. While Harold and Aquila are frantically searching their house, Asha is already gone. She's not just outside their house. She's not in the yard. She's nearly a mile away walking along Highway 18. How do we know this? Because two different witnesses saw her. All right, so this is the part of the story that's absolutely crucial, because without these witnesses, we'd have no idea what happened to Asha after she left her house. Witness number 1. Around 3:45 a.m. on Monday, February 14th, a truck driver is driving south on Highway 18. This is a dark two-lane highway with no streetlights. It's pouring rain. Visibility is terrible, and in his headlights, this driver sees something that makes him do a double take. It's a small child walking along the side of the road alone. Now, Highway 18 doesn't have sidewalks. It's not a road you'd walk on even in broad daylight. There's barely a shoulder. Cars go 55 miles per hour. It's dangerous. And there's this little girl walking south along the highway, in the rain, in the dark, at 3:45 in the morning. The truck driver is shocked. He slows down. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Is she lost? Is she in danger? But as he slows down, the little girl, Asha, sees his truck, and she runs. She runs away from the road toward the tree line. The driver is confused, but figures maybe she's scared of strangers. He doesn't want to frighten her more. He thinks maybe she lives nearby and got out of her house somehow. So he keeps driving. He's planning to call someone when he gets to where he's going. But then, about 15 minutes later, so around 4 a.m., another driver sees the exact same thing. Witness number 2 is also driving south on Highway 18, and he also sees a small child walking along the road. Same location, same little girl. But this driver is more concerned. A child alone on a highway at 4 a.m. in a storm? Something is very wrong. He turns his car around, he goes back, he's going to stop and help. But just like with the first witness, when Asha sees the car turning around, she runs. She runs into the woods off the side of the road. This driver gets out of his car, he calls out to her, he's trying to help, but she's gone, vanished into the darkness. Now this driver doesn't have a cell phone. Remember, this is 2000, and cell phones weren't as common. So he drives to the nearest place with a phone and calls the police. By the time he calls, it's probably around 4:15 or 4:30 a.m. And guess what? The police have already received a missing child report for Asha Degree. Her parents called it in around 3 a.m. So now investigators know two critical things. One, Asha left her house voluntarily. She wasn't snatched from her bed, she walked out on her own. And two, as of 4 a.m., she was alive and walking along Highway 18, about a mile from her house. But here's what makes absolutely no sense. Why? As soon as those witness reports came in, law enforcement went into full crisis mode. By dawn on Monday morning, there were dozens of officers searching Highway 18 and the surrounding woods. K-9 units were brought in. Helicopters were in the air. Volunteers started showing up by the hundreds. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, the Shelby Police Department, the FBI, the SBI, everyone was involved. This was all hands on deck. Asha's parents were beside themselves. Harold and Aquila couldn't understand how this had happened. How had Asha gotten out of the house without them hearing? Why would she leave? Where was she going? O'Brien, Asha's brother, was interviewed by investigators. He told them he woke up briefly during the night and heard the bed squeaking, probably Asha getting out of bed. But he thought she was just going to the bathroom. He fell back asleep. He didn't think anything of it. So that gives us a window. Asha probably left the house sometime between 12:30 a.m., when Harold last checked on the kids, and whenever O'Brien heard her get up, possibly around 2:30 or 3 a.m. That means Asha was out in that storm for at least an hour, possibly longer, before anyone even knew she was gone. Search teams focused on Highway 18 and the wooded areas where witnesses had seen Asha run. These are dense North Carolina woods, thick with trees, underbrush, creeks. A small child could easily get lost or hurt. They searched all day Monday, all day Tuesday. The search went on for days. And during that search, they found something. Actually, they found several things. And what they found only deepened the mystery. All right, so on Tuesday, February 15th, about a day and a half after Asha disappeared, searchers were combing through the area along Highway 18. About 1.3 miles from Asha's house, they came across a small storage shed. It belonged to a local upholstery business called Turner Upholstery. The shed wasn't locked. It was just used to store some equipment and materials. Searchers opened the shed to check inside, and what they found was striking. There were clear signs that someone had been in there recently, and that someone was almost certainly Asha. Inside the shed, they found candy wrappers, the same brand of candy that Asha had received in a Valentine's Day care package at school just days earlier. They found a pencil and a marker that Asha's parents confirmed belonged to her. But here's what's really interesting. They also found a hair bow. It was Asha's, and the way it was positioned suggested she'd been inside the shed, probably trying to stay dry and warm during the storm. So this tells us something crucial. After Asha ran off Highway 18 and into the woods, she didn't just keep running. She found this shed, probably by luck, and she went inside to wait out the storm or to rest. The question is, how long was she in there? And what happened next? There were no signs of a struggle in the shed. It looked like Asha had been there, had eaten some candy, and then had left. Voluntarily. But where did she go, and why did she leave the shed? If she was cold and scared, why not stay there where it was dry? That's when investigators started to think maybe Asha wasn't alone, maybe someone met her, maybe someone was waiting for her. As the search continued over the next few days, investigators found more items. Along Highway 18 and in the surrounding areas, they found pieces of Asha's clothing, a hair bow, a Mickey Mouse hair tie, some other small personal items. But here's what was missing: Asha's backpack. Remember I mentioned earlier that Asha had packed a backpack before she left? Well, her parents confirmed that a backpack was missing from the house, and when they checked what else was gone, they found some interesting items. Asha had taken a change of clothes, jeans, and a white shirt. She'd taken her basketball uniform, she'd taken a family photo, and she'd packed some of her personal belongings. This wasn't a child who impulsively ran out of the house. This was a child who planned to leave. She packed. She brought things she'd need. But why? What was she planning to do? For weeks, investigators searched for that backpack. It was evidence. It might contain clues about where Asha was going or who she was meeting. But the backpack was nowhere to be found. Until over a year later, when someone made a shocking discovery. August 3rd, 2001, that's a year and a half after Asha disappeared. Construction workers are doing road work on Highway 18 in Burke County, about 26 miles north of where Asha was last seen. They're digging, moving dirt, and one of them uncovers something wrapped in a plastic garbage bag. They open the bag, and inside they find another plastic bag. And inside that bag is a backpack. A child's backpack. They call the police, and when investigators arrive and examine the backpack, they realize immediately what they're looking at. It's Asha Degree's backpack. Inside the backpack are some of Asha's belongings, her clothing, her family photo. Other items her parents confirmed were hers. But here's what's so disturbing. The backpack was found 26 miles away from where Asha was last seen. It was buried. It was wrapped in plastic bags, double wrapped, like someone was deliberately trying to preserve it or hide it. And it was found along Highway 18, the same highway Asha had been walking on the night she disappeared. This was not Asha losing her backpack. This was someone taking it, transporting it 26 miles away, and burying it. This means that someone else was definitely involved in Asha's disappearance. This wasn't a case of a little girl wandering off and getting lost. Someone took her. Someone put her backpack in plastic bags. Someone drove 26 miles and buried it. Let's take a step back and analyze what we know from the evidence. First, Asha left her house voluntarily. She packed a bag. She got dressed. She walked out on her own. Nobody forced her out of the house. Second, she walked over a mile along Highway 18 in the pouring rain. Multiple witnesses saw her. She seemed to be walking with purpose, like she was going somewhere specific. Third, when people tried to help her, she ran away. She didn't want help. She wasn't trying to flag someone down, she was avoiding people. Fourth, she made it to the Turner upholstery shed, went inside, and waited there for some period of time. Fifth, at some point after leaving the shed, Asha disappeared, and someone took her backpack, drove 26 miles, and buried it. So here's the scenario investigators believe happened. Asha was lured out of her house by someone she knew or trusted. This person convinced her to meet them. Maybe they told her to walk to a specific location. Maybe they told her they'd pick her up. Asha, being a trusting child, did what she was told. She walked along Highway 18 toward a meeting point. When witnesses tried to stop and help her, she ran because she'd probably been told not to talk to anyone. She was scared of getting in trouble or of messing up the plan. She waited in the shed, possibly until the person was supposed to meet her, and then at some point, that person picked her up, and she was never seen again. This theory makes sense based on the evidence, but it raises new questions. Who convinced Asha to leave? How did they communicate with her? And why did Asha trust this person enough to walk into a storm alone in the middle of the night? Now, in any missing child case, the first people investigators look at are the family members. It's standard procedure, and as uncomfortable as it is to talk about, the Degree family was investigated. Harold and Akila were interviewed extensively. Their house was searched, their backgrounds were checked, their finances were examined, their relationships were scrutinized. O'Brien, Asha's brother, was interviewed separately. Child psychologists talked to him to make sure he was telling the truth about what he remembered from that night. Extended family members, aunts, uncles, grandparents, were all interviewed and cleared. And here's what investigators concluded. The Degree family had absolutely nothing to do with Asha's disappearance. They passed every test. Their stories were consistent. There was no evidence of abuse, neglect, or family dysfunction. In fact, by all accounts, the Degrees were model parents. They were involved. They were loving. They kept close tabs on their children. Harold and Akila have spent the last 24 years living in agony, wondering what happened to their daughter. They've cooperated fully with every investigation. They've done countless interviews. They've kept Asha's case in the public eye. These are not people who had anything to do with their daughter's disappearance. They are victims. So if it wasn't the family, then who was it? The prevailing theory, and the one most investigators believe, is that Asha was groomed by someone she knew and trusted. Here's how this theory works. Over a period of weeks or months before her disappearance, someone developed a relationship with Asha. This could have been someone from church, someone from her basketball team, a teacher, a coach, a family friend, someone who had regular, legitimate access to her. This person gradually gained Asha's trust. They probably gave her attention, told her she was special, maybe gave her small gifts. This is classic grooming behavior. Then, this person convinced Asha to meet them. They probably told her it would be an adventure, a secret, something exciting. And they told her she had to come alone at night, and she couldn't tell anyone. They might have even told her to pack a bag, that they were going on a trip or doing something special. Asha, being a trusting 9-year-old, believed this person. She was excited. She wasn't running away from her family, she was running towards something she thought would be fun or exciting. That's why she packed her basketball uniform and a family photo. She thought she'd be coming back. She thought this was temporary. The person probably told Asha to walk to a specific meeting place along Highway 18. Maybe they said they'd pick her up there. And Asha, not understanding the danger, did exactly what she was told. When witnesses tried to stop and help her, she ran because she'd been told not to talk to strangers. She'd been told the plan had to stay secret. She waited in the shed, possibly until this person was supposed to arrive, and then they picked her up. And from there, we don't know what happened. This theory is supported by several things. First, Asha's behavior suggests she trusted whoever she was meeting. Second, she left voluntarily and came prepared. Third, she avoided help from witnesses, suggesting she'd been coached. And fourth, the carefully buried backpack suggests someone was trying to hide evidence. The question is, who was this person? And how did they gain access to Asha without anyone noticing? Now here's a theory that some investigators have focused on: the basketball game. Remember, Asha had a basketball game scheduled for Monday, February 14th, but it was canceled due to weather. Some people believe this cancellation is somehow connected to her disappearance. Here's one scenario. Maybe whoever was grooming Asha had planned to make their move during the basketball game. Maybe they'd planned to approach her then. But when the game was canceled, they had to change plans. Maybe they told Asha to meet them that night instead. Another angle: in the days before she disappeared, Asha had apparently struck out during a basketball game. She was upset about it. Some people have theorized that whoever was grooming her used that moment of vulnerability to manipulate her. Maybe they told her they could help her become a better player. Maybe they promised to take her to practice or give her special training. Investigators looked into everyone associated with Asha's basketball team: coaches, other players, parents, volunteers. They interviewed all of them, and as far as we know, they didn't find any solid suspects. But the basketball connection keeps coming up. It feels significant somehow. Now here's something really interesting that came out years after Asha disappeared. When investigators examined the contents of Asha's backpack, the one that was found buried in 2001, they found something unusual. There was a photograph inside, and it wasn't a family photo. It was a photo of a young girl that nobody in Asha's family recognized. Investigators released this photo to the public in 2016, 16 years after Asha disappeared. They asked, "Does anyone know who this girl is? Does anyone recognize this photo?" And someone did. A woman came forward and said, "That's me. That's a photo from when I was a child." So investigators tracked down this woman and interviewed her. And here's what they learned. She had no connection to Asha. She'd never met her. But the photo had been taken at a photo shoot, and copies of the photo had been distributed, possibly as part of a marketing package or given away at some event. So somehow Asha had come into possession of this photo of a stranger. How? And why did she pack it in her backpack the night she disappeared? The most likely explanation is that whoever groomed Asha gave her this photo. Maybe they told her, "This is my daughter," or "This is my niece," or "This is someone you'll meet." Maybe they used the photo as part of their manipulation. Investigators believe that finding out how and where Asha got this photo could be the key to solving the case, because whoever gave it to her is probably the person responsible for her disappearance. They've asked the public, if you attended any events in the Shelby area in 1999 or early 2000 where photos like this were distributed, please come forward. If you remember anything about these photos, contact law enforcement, because this photo is a thread, and if they can pull on that thread, it might unravel the whole case. Officially, Asha Degree's disappearance remains an open, active investigation. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office is still working on it. The FBI is still involved, and the case is reviewed regularly with fresh eyes. In 2016, the FBI released new information about the case, including details about that photograph found in Asha's backpack. They were hoping that advances in technology and renewed public interest might generate new leads. In 2021, on the 21st anniversary of Asha's disappearance, investigators announced they were using new forensic techniques to re-examine evidence from the case. DNA technology has improved dramatically since 2000, and they were hoping to find something they'd missed before. But as of now, there's been no major breakthrough. The reward for information leading to Asha's whereabouts has grown to over $45,000. Tips still come in regularly. Every few months, there's a new lead that investigators follow up on. But so far, nothing has led to Asha. Here's what we know for certain. Asha is not in the woods around Highway 18. Those areas have been searched exhaustively multiple times over the years. If she'd gotten lost and died of exposure, her remains would have been found by now. This means that someone took her, someone picked her up after she left that shed, someone put her somewhere, and that person has kept that secret for 24 years. Harold and Aquila Degree have never given up hope of finding Asha. Every year on February 14th, they hold a vigil. Community members gather to remember Asha, And to show support for the family, they release balloons, they pray, they keep Asha's memory alive. The Degrees still live in the same house on Oak Crest Street. They've kept Asha's bedroom the same. Her belongings are still there, waiting for her to come home. O'Brien, Asha's brother, is now in his mid-30s. He's spoken publicly about the impact Asha's disappearance has had on his life. He says not knowing what happened to his sister has been torture. He says he thinks about her every single day. Harold and Akila have done countless interviews over the years. They've appeared on every major news program. They've worked with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They've done everything they can to keep Asha's case in the public eye. And they've never stopped believing that someone out there knows what happened. They've made public pleas. If you know something, please come forward. Even if you're scared, even if you think what you know isn't important, please just tell us what happened to our daughter. The pain they've endured is unimaginable. To have your child vanish in the middle of the night, to not know if she's alive or dead, to not know if she suffered, to not be able to lay her to rest if she's gone. That's a special kind of hell that nobody should have to live through.
If you found these stories as compelling and disturbing as I did, please take a moment to subscribe to Murder and Mystery HQ and join our community of mystery seekers. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss a case. Let me know in the comments which of these mysteries haunts you the most, or if you have theories about what might have happened. Until next time, remember, not all mysteries get solved. Not all questions have answers. And sometimes, the rain keeps falling, washing away evidence but never the truth. Stay safe and stay curious.